What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Swing for the Fences MLB show here on the Run for Your Sports YouTube channel. It is Sunday morning. We've got what I think is a pretty tasty 11-game slate on our hands. A lot of baseball to be played, all 30 teams in action, hopefully, if the weather holds. And a lot to talk about. Joined today by Mr. Third and Schlong himself. Bryce, how's it going on this Sunday morning?
I'm having a good weekend. You know, I love Sundays, day baseball, NASCAR. So everything's good here. Not quite as good as Tony's Sunday or weekend has been with that big hit last night. So would have been nice to wake up to that as opposed to my teams, but
yeah,
we'll get them today.
That's right. And there can only be one winner in the flagship tournament, so we're happy to have our guy Big T take it down. Monster day for him. I believe he had 20 lineups. I think I saw went very, very heavy on the Braves, which is of course DC approved. I actually was watching that game. I didn't have the same DFS success that Big T had, but I did live bet the Braves at plus 1,000 when they were down 8-2. So got a little 5K shipper on that. I tweeted the day before about, firing some live bets when your eyes tell you something, keep those accounts clean. So that was a fun one to put my money where my mouth was and had a nice score on the Braves comeback. Of course, big congrats to Big T on a heater right now. And I think he said it well. Big T gets hot. You might want to jump on that train. I believe he'll have some. I think he's normally off on Sundays for baseball, but I'm sure he'll have some goodies for the people, for members in Discord. I've seen him in there already this morning. Should be a very fun day of baseball. One of my favorite slates of this young season. It doesn't always mean it will, turn out to be a monster slate in the DFS streets, but I do really like this slate in general. We do have 11 games to talk about. So without further ado, let's jump into the first one of the night. And we do start out back in Atlanta. Obviously, we're the heroes for Big T yesterday. We've got Chris Sale on the mound for the Atlanta Braves. He looks very good, looks revitalized a little bit, kind of vintage Chris Sale. Was impressed with what I saw from him. He will take out a Diamondbacks team, though, that has been swinging good bats all season long. We saw him jump on Max Fried. Obviously, got to Spencer Strider, although Strider looks like he's going to be down for the year with Tommy John surgery, I believe. So fortunate stuff there. But regardless, Sale looks good. I don't know if I want to pay that price tag, Bryce, on a slate where I really do like pitching, including some cheap pitchers against a D-backs team, which is just not really a team that I want to pick on a big slate. But nevertheless, I do think Sale has upside. On the other side, Ryan Nelson, a guy I did have some hope for coming into the season and still do, frankly, but maybe not in this matchup against the Braves team. I think this is the best offense in baseball. Proved it last night, and I expect them to kind of just keep doing their thing all season as long as this lineup can stay healthy, which it certainly is right now. Normal lineup for the Braves. Only difference, Travis d'Arnaud, their starting catcher, is out for the Braves. Chadwick Trump will be in there hitting ninth. Do we see another Braves romping today, Bryce? I think it's kind of always in play. And yeah, Ryan Nelson, despite, my thoughts that he might be a little underrated, still certainly not a pitcher that you're going to avoid with a lineup this good. Talk to me, Bryce. Braves and Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I don't really play pitchers against the Braves or the Dodgers, unless they're like an absolute ace. Like there might be like a handful of pitchers that I'd be willing to do that with, and
or a short slate or something. But on an 11-game slate,
no, on an 11-game slate, there's no need to do that. Ryan Nelson certainly doesn't fall into that bucket. Like
right.
I normally play 150 teams, and I don't necessarily like cut tons of pitchers like just straight off from the jump because like random shit can happen. But I'm cutting him here. The Braves are just such a tough matchup. I think they're really solid plays on the slate. Probably, I think they might go a little underowned for like their upside just because of the pricing and like there's other team totals around them. But, when they get going, and especially like if they can get to the pen here, I mean, you saw it yesterday. They can just string hits together. They're not afraid to run. Lineup just has immense upside all around. And the bottom of it is significantly cheaper with like Trump in instead of Darno. Makes it a little easier to stack. You saw like with Tony's lineup that won yesterday, you saw like both bottom of the order stacks come through. And like in tournaments, like I would not be afraid to like target like the bottom half of the guys because like the top 5 batters are always going to carry like a lot more ownership here. And like granted, they're the better hitters, but it's baseball and it's random. And I like including like at least 1 to 2 of like the bottom of the order guys in my stacks, like just to, if you're hand building teams, just to get a little different. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good spot for the Braves. Diamondbacks, kind of tough matchup for Sale. I think they're a really solid offense. He only gets one lefty bat in. Their lineup isn't out, but assuming Corbin Carroll's in there today and he's not getting a day of rest, only one lefty in the lineup for him. I think Sale's a fine spend on this slate. He's certainly not a priority. I'm likely going to be coming in around, if I had to guess, like 20% ownership. I don't want to go too hard at him. I don't like necessarily want to fade his upside. He threw 85 pitches in his debut. You probably see him stretched out to about 90 here. So not really worried about any pitch count concerns for Sale here. It's more matchup based. I mean, Diamondbacks have been absolutely matching. Marte started off both games in this series with a home run. So like, it can go south pretty quickly, but we'll get to the weather later, but with the crappy weather in Minnesota, like if it looks like that game isn't going to play, you have a little less to spend up on, like if you're not going to be able to play Tristan McKenzie here. So I think that just opens up a little more like Sale. And then like, we'll get into the rest of the pitchers in a bit here, but yeah, I'm likely coming in around 20% on him.
Yeah, I think that's fine on Sale. Jacob Stubbs is Acuna worth the salary right now. I know he's off to a little bit of a slow start. No home runs yet, just one stolen base. Someone who's watched like pretty maybe every single Braves game, or at least most of them. I wouldn't be worried about Acuna whatsoever. I have zero concern. That's just baseball, right? It's been just over a week, and sometimes and a bunch of those games were played in the cold too. So Acuna absolutely will be coming around. I will say in this particular matchup, really, really hard, or at least it was last year, to steal bases against Ryan Nelson. So that does reduce Acuna's appeal a little bit. Of course, he could run. He could run on anybody. He can run on the bullpen. He can do damage with the bat, but it does take a little bit of the projection off his ceiling for me. But in terms of swinging the bat and all that stuff, again, zero concern for Acuna for me. I'll have some Sale. I think 2 Bryce, maybe less than you, just because there's a bunch of cheap pitchers that I like, and I don't love this matchup. I will say, if you're not on Sale, these D-backs bats, which have been on fire. I mean, Ketel Marte, what do you say? Three home runs in a row. These guys are all coming in like 1 or 2% owned. I don't mind sprinkling in some Marte, some Christian Walker, right? Just right-handed power against Chris Sale. Eugenio Suarez is under 1%, I'm seeing projected. So, yeah, I think you can certainly sprinkle in Lourdes Gurriel. It's a lineup that's on fire. We know Sale's going to be somewhat popular, and these guys can do damage. I don't know if I would go for the full stack of the D-backs, but I'm definitely including the power right-handed bats against Chris Sale in my pool tonight. I'm playing MME today myself as well. So, yeah, I'll sprinkle in the D-backs, and then I do think the Braves will probably be my highest owned stack, partly because I do like some cheaper pitchers, as I mentioned. Looks like the Twins game has been postponed, so no need to worry about that one. We are down to a 10-game slate. I'm kind of glad they got that out of the way early, so we don't have to deal with it. That's Arizona, Atlanta, certainly an important first game there. I think this next game is really interesting to me as well. Philadelphia and the Washington Nationals. Total sitting around 8 in this one. We have 2 lefties on the hill, Mackenzie Gore for the Nationals, Christopher Sanchez for the Phillies. Both of these pitchers, these 2 kind of youngish lefties, looked really good, especially stuff-wise in their first start. Mackenzie Gore's velocity up across the board on his pitches to the point where the guy who grades out, pitch grades based on velocity and spin rate and all that stuff, he actually rated Mackenzie Gore's fastball as the best fastball in baseball, based on his first start in terms of the raw stuff that it presents, which is a big change for Mackenzie Gore based on past years. So I know it's kind of a tough matchup against the Phillies here, but there are strikeouts to be had, including those two lefty-lefty matchups at the top of the lineup. Schwarber, Harper. I think Gore's got a good chance against those guys. And I like Mackenzie Gore a lot here. I think he'll get some ownership. I'm seeing maybe 15% on DraftKings. I think that's more than a fair price at 8.2K. And then on the other side, I like Christopher Sanchez a ton too. He looks improved, had a really good first start, gets an awesome matchup here, frankly, against the Washington Nationals. Sanchez, I assume, will come in, 15, 20% as well. So maybe similar ownerships on these two guys. But these two lefties, I really, really like them both, and probably off bats in general for this game. Obviously, if you think both pitchers are underrated, which I do, you're going to be a little bit lower on the bat. So that's where I stand here. Give me the pitching in Nationals and Philadelphia. Where do you sit, Bryce, on Nationals and Phillies?
I completely agree with you. I think it's a pretty good game to be under the hitters on. I think Philadelphia is going to carry some ownership here, especially on FanDuel. Philly's extremely cheap on FanDuel today. People love playing road teams here, and they like playing Philly in general. Just a lot of big names, a lot of upside bats. I think some of those bats are mitigated by a lefty, and especially a good lefty here. The Pirates have proven to be a tougher out than a lot of people kind of thought coming into the season as well. And Gore didn't his numbers didn't look great, but when you look under the hood, everything's there. So, I think Philly, I'm not going to have no Philly today, but I think it's a decent under spot compared to how popular they'll be. I like both pitchers here. I don't really want anything to do with the Nats bats against Sanchez. Sanchez is probably one of my favorite salary savers of the day, if not my favorite for 7,600. And I'm definitely going to have a decent amount of him in my lineups on both sides. If you had to choose some bats in this game, probably the shockier ones here, Philly righties. If you have a different take on Gore, and you're trying to full stack the Phillies, I would definitely not leave out the lefties because you're kind of hoping the game gets to the bullpen. And guys like Harper and Schwarber are going to go way lower owned than guys like Trey Turner and Castellanos and Real Muto, assuming he's in the team. Yeah, he is. And it's kind of like stacking the Astros. Always include these lefty bats, even if it's lefty. You're betting for a lot of runs here if you're stacking them. So I wouldn't leave out the lefties, but not my favorite game of the day for hitters.
Yeah, wind blowing in from left field too, which should help both of these pitchers keep the ball in the park. Obviously, righty power is what you normally want against Mackenzie Gore. I think this is a pretty tough spot for those types of hitters. And then another thing you got to like about these pitchers, Sanchez got up to 85 pitches in his first start, so he should be good to go into the 90s. Mackenzie Gore threw 101 pitches. I think he might be the only pitcher to go over 100 pitches in his first start. That speaks to two things, right? One, just how good – I know the start wasn't that fantastic for Gore, but it does speak to just how good he's feeling, how healthy he is, right? That type of thing. If they're going to let you go 101 pitches in that first start of the season, shows a lot of confidence from the manager. It's a bad bullpen behind him. And, Gore, I wouldn't be surprised to see him throw over 100 pitches again here. Don't overlook these guys on FanDuel either, right? FanDuel, obviously, we're kind of going for that quality start, going for the win. Obviously, they both can't get the win, but I think both these guys have a pretty good chance to go 6 innings, which can be obviously critical getting those bonuses on FanDuel. So very, very much in on Gore and Sanchez will be two of my higher owned pitchers today. Expecting, frankly, big things out of both guys on this slate. Next game that we will talk about is the Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees. This total also sitting around 8. We saw, offense in this game last night kind of explode a little, or afternoon night. I don't know. I watched baseball all day. It blends together eventually. But anyway, we did see offense in New York. Looks like decent hitting weather, should be around 50 degrees, crosswinds. And then we have Honestly, another two pitchers that I like a lot. I was on Luis Gil a little bit in that D-backs game. Didn't love that matchup. He was pretty good though, and another pitcher who has, I think we were on the show together, Bryce, on the day that he pitched. A huge fastball, 99, 100 miles per hour, can locate it well. They pulled him, unfortunately, after 84 pitches. Needed one more out to qualify for the win. I do think they'll be a little bit cautious with him, but listen, he threw 84 pitches. It means he can probably throw 90 plus if things are going well. So I like Luis Gil from that perspective. One I did get wrong. He was super low owned. He just had a sprinkling. But Bowden Francis did not perform well against the Astros. The Astros shipped on that slate, gave up 3 home runs, 7 earned runs over 5 1/3 innings. He also did show some pretty promising signs. I mean, 7 strikeouts against the Astros in your first major league start. Like I know the home runs were there, but that's still impressive. That 7-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. His stuff looked pretty good. I think he's a strike thrower, and this Yankees lineup is not one that you necessarily want to target. It is a lot easier and higher upside, in my opinion, than facing the Astros. So I even think Bowden Francis down here at 6,200 going to have no ownership today. I do still think he's interesting at this price and this ownership. You don't have to go crazy with it, but I will have him sprinkled in my lineups, no question about it. And I'll have a fair share of Mr. Luis Gil as well. Big believer in him going forward. And the top of the lineup for the Blue Jays is a little scary. That Springer, Vlad, Bo Bichette falls off in a hurry, though. And I think Luis Gil might have a good first start at home here. So another game where I'm definitely higher on these pitchers than the field will be, and I won't have a ton of bats. It would definitely be the Yankees side, rather, that I would more likely use. Obviously, that Soto, Judge, Rizzo, Judge with 2 home runs yesterday. That looks fine to me. I just have, I'm certain, more faith in Francis than the field will have, which will have me a little bit lower on those guys. But certainly wouldn't want to talk anyone off the Yankees. Don't want to go overboard on the Francis stuff. Over to you, Bryce, Toronto, and the New York Yankees.
I think the Yankees are a good team to be over on hitting wise and pitching against. They're a lineup that can strike out a lot. Pitchers have a lot of upside against them. That's what you're looking for in tournaments.
Yep.
He's like 2% owned pitcher that can go get you 30. And, I think Francis is in a decent spot to be able to do it. I also think the Yankees are in a decent spot to hit a ton of home runs.
It's absolutely one where you can play both sides, right?
Younger pitchers with like really good strikeout stuff typically tend to walk people, get in trouble, and then give up home runs. Like if they're going to get blown up. So, I can see both stories playing out here. I'll probably be over on Francis and the Yankees power. On the other side of the matchup, definitely like Toronto a lot less. As you said, this lineup really falls off after the top 3. Luis Gil gets to face 6 righties here as well. Toronto's only putting out 3 lefties here. I think it's a decent spot for him. Want a lot less to do with Toronto on this side of the game, and a lot more to do with Luis Gil. Francis will probably come in around 5 to 10% for me, and Gil will probably be around 10 to 15. And then bats don't really want anything to do with Toronto. Like some Yankees power in the spot. Judge showcased his upside yesterday. People might be willing to chase that a bit. Don't mind pivoting over to Soto a bit, or if you're able to play both of them, I think it's a decent spot for some upside here if you want to get a little different.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm getting more into the MME streets, both on DraftKings and FanDuel this year. Some pretty good success so far. What's your approach with like the high upside guys, like an Aaron Judge, even if you don't like the individual matchup? To me, when I'm like, even when a guy like him has a bad individual matchup, it makes his ownership so low. Like sometimes it gets down to like 3 or 4%, where it seems like it's almost always worth being over on that number for a guy who can hit 2 home runs against anybody. Is that your take on it, or do you have a different take?
I'm almost always over on the low owned studs, like whether it's like a lefty matchup, like Jordan or like Kyle Tucker or like Judge, and like this isn't like that bad of a spot for him, and no one's going to play him here. Like I think he's a great like one-off type of guy. When I'm constructing my teams, I mainly play 5-2-1 on DraftKings, and I mainly play 4-3-1 on FanDuel. So I like doing that because A, it automatically gets you different. B, it lets you hit your exposures on some of these guys like as one-offs and two-offs like a little bit better than like if you're restricting it to only like 5 threes. Like the builders just kind of, and especially Saber Sim kind of, I've just always found that like my file kind of feels better and looks better. And like, you know, if you hit a Judge two home run, like one-off game with like the nut stack, I mean, that's how you win these types of tournaments. So I'm almost always over on those type of guys.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll ask you one more question, then we'll move on. So the 4-3-1 build on FanDuel, Big T mentioned it too. It seems like a lot of people are using that. Why that build over a 4-4 build? Obviously, correlation, very, very important over on FanDuel. Is it just getting kind of exposure to the studs, trying to be different, that type of thing?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, say you want to stack the Mets-Reds game with like an expensive pitcher. It's like almost impossible to max out your salary, and like all of those teams are going to be like very similar to each other. So it's like a decent way to differentiate yourself at the very top, without giving up like too much to do it. And like it lets you play more studs too, because like with how soft the pricing is on FanDuel, like it's super easy to fit in like an Acuna, like a Judge. Like I don't know if I'm going to be playing Dodgers based on the weather, but like an Ohtani type of one-off, as opposed to like getting the same like 4-4 builds as everyone else is playing. So it's more just differentiating yourself in the field at another level without giving up a lot, as opposed to like if I was like hand clicking my teams and like trying to beat like, I don't know, like win like 100-man contest, I'd be totally fine with the 4-4. But like in the big lotto GPPs and the big MMEs, I think there's a lot of value in like getting off like the exact same 4-4 builds that everyone else will use.
Yeah, it makes total sense. That's kind of what I figured it would be. Thanks for that answer. We'll keep it moving here. We do have 4 games starting at the 1:35 Eastern time. The last one is Baltimore and Pittsburgh. We've got Dean Kramer on the mound for the Orioles versus the lefty Marco Gonzalez going for the Pirates. Pretty good hitting weather in Pittsburgh today. It's not an ideal park for hitting, but it should be around 60 degrees, light wind. So this time of year on the East Coast, that qualifies as pretty decent hitting weather. We've seen the Orioles. I think they disappointed yesterday, but they've been pretty good, obviously, overall. We've got, looks like pretty standard lineups for both of these teams. Total sitting at 8.5 or so. I'm off of both of these pitchers, Kramer and Gonzalez. Not a ton of interest for me on either guy. And then I do think the offenses for both teams look good. O'Neal Cruz, we know the damage he can do. Sawinski, Reynolds from the Pirates side. And then, kind of the top of the Orioles lineup looks good too. Power bats against Marco Gonzalez. Ready power especially has performed well over the years. So, been kind of on the pitchers so far for the most part. But this is the game where I'm switching over to the bats. I do like both these teams. Your thoughts here, Bryce? Pirates and Orioles.
Yeah, pitchers here for me are only a sprinkle. Like I'm not cutting them from the pool like I would like a Ryan Nelson type of guy, but I'm likely going to be 5% max on either of these guys. Like if they find your way, like say you're doing 20 max, like if they find your way into one team, I wouldn't like blow up your entire file over it, but not guys I really want to be over on. I don't think they have tons of upside compared to some of these other cheap guys. Like I'd much rather take a shot on a guy who can go out there and get you, 8 to 10 strikeouts as opposed to like Marco Gonzalez. So you said it pretty well. Weather on the East Coast is always like really bad to start the year, and this qualifies as good hitting weather for sure on this slate. I think both of these lineups are like pretty solid. I mean, the Orioles are one of the better teams in baseball, and the Pirates have been kind of like a surprising team. Just looking at the lineups, I mean, you have some guys with like tons of upside that are going to go completely unowned here, like Jorge Mateo. I think James McCann is like a fine catcher punt. I would like try and like get him in. I mean, the only issue with him on DraftKings is like you can't play him and Adley together. That's kind of one nice thing about FanDuel, being able to use the utility. But like the righties in the spot a lot. Like I would definitely not leave out like Henderson or Mullins from my stacks. But like if you're playing the Orioles as like a secondary stack, I'd probably stick to the righties. If you're playing them a full stack, I'd include the lefties. And yeah, I like this lineup a decent amount. Going to be over here for sure. I think Mountcastle is one of the better bats on the slate. Price considered only 4.3K against a lefty here. Guy's been absolutely mashing the ball to start the year. And so is Adley. So those would probably be my favorite two Orioles, favorite two Pirates. I mean, I think Cruz is in a great spot here. Really like Brian Hayes. Sawinski stays way too cheap. I'm not really sure when his price is going to get bumped, but it should at some point here. And I think 3.7K is a decent buy low opportunity. Like the Pirates for upside as well. Kind of the first game that we've been aligned on liking the hitting, but I think it's with good reason here. Like I wouldn't go absolutely insane, and like if I was hand building one team today, like I'd probably prefer these guys as secondary stacks, but I'm going to have them in 5-mans as well in the big GPP.
Yeah, two a little bit tired bullpens, especially on the Pirates side. I think their three best relievers all likely unavailable for this game. So if Orioles can do some damage, which seems pretty likely against Martin Perez, should get into the bad pitchers out of the Pirates pen. Obviously, could do damage. All 9 innings, get the full guaranteed 9 innings on the road. So I'm due. Baltimore is kind of growing on me more and more as we talk through this slate. That's Baltimore and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Next game on the list: New York Mets and Cincinnati Reds. Total sitting around 8.5. We know how good this ballpark can play, especially for power. It does look like there'll be some wind blowing in, but 60 degrees, modest winds blowing in. Should still be a pretty good park to hit in Cincinnati between the Reds and the Mets. Lefty Andrew Abbott and lefty Sean Manaea pitching for these teams. Abbott, decent pitcher, certainly not a guy you need to avoid. Mets obviously haven't done a ton yet this year with the bats. Obviously going to break out at some point. And then Manaea, he was, I think, super chalk that first start against the Tigers and absolutely shoved. 28 DraftKings points in that one. Looked really good. I'm still not really buying the Manaea stuff. Do we know if he'll be chalky today? I think he'll have some ownership. Yeah, maybe 15 to 20%, something like that on Sean Manaea. That makes sense. I think that's fair. There is strikeouts to be had against this Reds team. I'm probably on the other side, though, for the most part, honestly. I'll be going to some of these Reds. Power, Steer, Encarnacion Strand, Indy at the top. Yeah, really most of this lineup I think looks good, especially the top 6 or so. And I kind of like the Mets bats too here. Lindor, Alonso, Alvarez, that 2-3-4, Starling Marte, 3,600. I'm in on really bats from both sides of this game. Will be lower on the pitchers, I think, than consensus. What about you, Bryce? Reds and Mets.
Yeah, I'll probably be around 10 to 15% on each pitcher. I don't really have a strong take as opposed to the field here. I think they both have enough strikeout upside to put themselves in the winner today, which is why I'm, above 10% on them. So I wouldn't go nuts with either of them, but they both have enough upside to get there. Not like really good matchup for either, but it's not like the Reds are like that bad of a matchup or the Mets. Both teams do have the propensity to strike out. Batting wise, I prefer the Mets side probably, just because they're so cheap. You're guaranteed 9 innings. I think they only have like Alonso, Lindor are like super easy to fit in with like the rest of these 3K guys in the lineup. You have a catcher hitting 4th, which I always like. So it's just kind of a nice team to click on and like make secondary stacks with, or even primary stacks. So, I think Alonso is going to get a hold of these lefties at some point. It feels like we have a lot of lefties on the slate in general, but yeah, I like Alonso at first base a good amount. If I had to play a one-off, he would definitely be it. Red side of the ball, really like these righties. I mean, granted, everyone's a righty besides Ellie. Ellie's like, I don't really like leaving out lefties for my teams, but Ellie looks so bad against left-handed pitching right now. It's pretty crazy how often he's striking out, and it's just kind of a free out almost against left-handed pitching at this point. So, like, that's something I would keep an eye on. Like, your hand building or making 20 max teams. Like, I'm not going to click Ellie out of my teams in 150, but he's kind of reaching the point against lefties where you just really want nothing to do with it. Granted, he is the lone lefty in this team. Or is Ellie a switch hitter?
Yeah, he is switch. Yep.
Okay.
He can't. He should just hit from the left side, but for now he does swing from the right side.
I don't get why I just never play him against lefties.
Yeah.
But yeah, not really my favorite spot. Like the righties a lot more. Spencer Steer absolutely matches left-handed pitching. I think India, Strand, Candelario are pretty solid. And then when you get to the bottom of the order, Espinal and like Bubba Thompson are super cheap. I do worry about pinch hit risk a bit with those guys, especially Bubba. But other than that, I like the Reds decent amount here.
Yeah, that 1 through 4 Reds, India, Steer, CES, and Candelario, I think looks pretty good to me against Manaya. And then, you mentioned Alonso. Francisco Alvarez would be the other guy that I think is a really, really strong one-off. Big power from the catcher, has looked locked in so far. You do a couple questions here. Apone says, if you stack the Braves every slate, will it be profitable over the season? I think probably. I wouldn't advise just doing that strategy, but I think you'll want to have a lot of exposure to the Braves over the course of the season, especially if there's cheaper pitching that looks tolerable to you, which I do think there is on this slate. That does kind of determine my love or not for the Braves on a lot of slates. This is a good question. We've kind of talked some strategy, some Saber builds. What do you guys set your uniques on Saber 150 max? 3, Bryce says. That's what I've been using on a 3-game slate. Sometimes I'll move that down to 2.
For bigger slates, 3. I don't think I would ever use 1, even for a 2-game slate. I'd use 2. But shorter slates, you can definitely tone that down.
Yeah, the idea behind that, at least from my perspective, you don't really want to be your lineups competing with each other for first place, right? You're just trying to get one lineup up all the way up there at the top. Obviously, sweeping the board, it's fun to go 1st, 2nd, 4th, 7th, 8th, 10th, but like that's a much higher.
I'd rather win first on different days than go 1st through 5th with a bunch of one-offs. You just narrow your path to the top a lot doing it. And like, I don't know, it's not easy to get the perfect 5-man stack right. So when you do, you want it with different options. You don't want the same teams stacked with the same teams and the same pitchers over and over again, just in different ways. Like now, if you're playing like 10 or 20 teams, that changes a bit. And like, you can try and get like more of a train towards the top, but like in 150 teams, you want to be a little more diverse than that.
A part of the reason behind that is like you do want to get some percentage of your money back, right? Even when you don't have the winner. Like most days, sadly, it'd be fun to ship a GPP every day, but that's not the reality of the situation. And obviously, if you do, 3 uniques instead of 1, you have a much higher chance to get some percentage of your buy-ins back instead of getting clean swept. So good advice there from one of the best DFS players around, Mr. Third and Schlong. Let's keep it moving. We're halfway through the slate. We do have 5 more games to talk about. This slate down to 10 games with the postponement between the Twins and Guardians. If you do want Third and Schlong scores, my information, Big T scores, any of that good stuff, we do have it over at runpeersports.com, and you can use promo code DC15 for 15% off weekly, monthly packages. We have MLB only, and of course, what you should do is sign up for the full access to get all the winners, every sport, good times over at Run Pure Sports, get in the Discord, all that good stuff. Big crew watching here on Sunday morning, up to almost 440 people. We do appreciate you watching. All we ask, hit that like button for us. Does help us bring you these shows 6 days a week, completely free of charge. Go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't done so yet. All right, let's keep it moving. Oakland and Detroit here. We have what I think is almost certainly going to be the chalkiest pitcher of the slate, Jack Flaherty pitching for the Tigers here against a really bad Oakland lineup. I was all over Flaherty in that first start. He was awesome. He was somewhat lower owned, I think, in that one. Was one of those guys that kind of clearly made big improvements over in spring training. You could see it. It carried over, had an awesome start. He's going to be really, really popular today, Bryce. And we're not getting an ownership discount either. He's the most expensive pitcher on FanDuel. He's up there on DK. Is he second highest behind Chris Sale? I think he might be.
When you take out the Minnesota game, and if
and
you're worried about the weather in Chicago too, he becomes the second most.
Yeah, effectively pretty much the second highest pitcher. I don't really want to play Imanaga against the Dodgers anyway. So he's expensive. He's chalk. And anytime that's the case, I think you have to, at least from my perspective, make a conscious decision. Do you want to eat the expensive chalk? Partly it depends on the other options. And so it kind of pains me because I do think Flaherty is going to be good here. Again, I was all over him on the first start. He's one of my kind of bounce back candidates this year. But on this particular slate, I'm not sure I want to eat, 35-40% Flaherty ownership, something like that.
Yeah, he's going to be 40 to 50 here, especially with the Twins game getting canceled. Like the McKenzie ownership should just go right to him. I mean,
they're like the exact same price. Even it's Flaherty $100 cheaper, right? So people that had McKenzie,
people just QPR.
They can keep the same lineup, click him out, put Flaherty in there. So that's going to bump Flaherty another 5 to 10%.
Yeah, I think he comes in between 40 and 50 in the flagship here. I'd be surprised if he was under. I'd be extremely surprised if he was under 35.
Yeah, I think 35 to 50%, probably most contest seems about right for Flaherty. Again, I expect him to pitch well, but it is baseball. Look what happened to Kevin Gausman, to Max Fried yesterday. We've seen it just happens all the time where the chalk expensive pitcher do bust. And there are so many other guys that I like that I'm still, I think, going to play some, but I'll be under the field on Jack Flaherty, just other ways I think I can go. And then I do like the Tigers' offense against Joe Boyle. We stacked against him his first start, talked about. He's just super wild, can't find the strike zone, puts guys all over his base paths. Gave up 28 stolen bases last year in the minor leagues. So guys like Meadows, Green, Carpenter, McKinstry, Canna, a lot of these guys could run on Joe Boyle, and we know he's going to put guys on the base paths. Looks like a pretty sneaky good spot for the Tigers here for me, Bryce. Obviously an important game here with the chalk pitcher and maybe a sneaky Tigers stack. Where do you stand between the Tigers and the Oakland A's?
So when I'm looking at, it's pretty easy to determine that he's the chalkiest pitcher. When I'm looking at say who the chalkiest pitcher of the day is going to be, it's kind of comes down to an opportunity cost decision. It's like, what can you play instead of him? And if it's like a steaming pile of shit, I'm fine going over on these guys, but I think there are fine alternatives today. So I'm likely to come in probably around 25 to 30%. I'm not going to take a massively under stance because I do like Flaherty, as you said. I do like picking on Oakland. It's just baseball. There's variance. Even if Oakland scores a couple runs, there's no guarantee that he gets there.
One of the reasons I'm okay fading him for the most part today is I think he could have a big game, right? We expect him to pitch well. He could put up 25 DraftKings points, right? That's a big pitching game right now, and still not be, in my opinion, SP1 or SP2. I think there are good enough pitchers who could beat him, even if he's good. And then if he's bad, obviously, then you've got all sorts of opportunities. So that's kind of where I'm at on Flaherty. I know some people are going to play him anyway. I totally get that. Do you ever just completely fade the chalk pitcher, or do you need a really strong reason to do that?
I don't think I've ever just totally clicked him out. I think reasons that I would do it would be pitch count or injury concerns.
Right. You need some real kind of outlier reason for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, playing 150 teams, it kind of allows me to not have to do that. I'd just rather go massively under and still leave myself a couple paths if the guy ends up doing well. But yeah, if you're making, I don't know, 1 to like 20 lineups, I would be fine like clicking out the chalk pitcher on most days. You know, it kind of increases your variance a bit in terms of your outcomes, but I don't think it hurts you like trying to get to the top. Like if I play an under in 150, like I'm obviously going to be under the field as a whole. So, you know,
Yeah.
you're kind of decreasing your variance a bit by it. Like, as you said earlier, like I'm playing not, I'm obviously playing to win, but I'm also not playing to like wipe. Like it's not sustainable to to play 150 teams and wipe every day. So
Sure.
yeah,
It gets expensive.
yes, it does. I mean, it's a question of like how risky you want to be. I'd be fine fading the chalk pitcher on almost any slate in baseball GPPs. I think there's fine options today. There isn't like the super expensive ace to spend for. Like Flaherty kind of falls into like a pretty friendly price here. I think at 8,900 in terms of his upside. Like if he was like super expensive, I'd be much more willing to go under because like it would restrict your builds a decent amount. But yeah, I'll probably be 25 to 30%. If you are fading him, I don't mind Oakland as like one-offs. You can run on Flaherty. So like I would kind of try and target the base stealers a bit from Oakland. While they are a piece of shit to line up, like they still have some guys with some upside here. Like they're still professional hitters. Yeah, I definitely not Xing out Oakland small stacks. I doubt I'll play any Oakland 5-mans today. Tigers are one of the better offenses for cheap today. You know, you get Parker Meadows here. I do the
Awesome
cash
play.
stuff.
Parker Meadows
I do the cash stuff every day. I mean, I love cheap leadoffs in really good spots, and this fits the bill for him to a T. I think he's one of the best price adjusted plays on the board. And then, you know, if you want to stack them up, it's pretty cheap behind them too. Kind of creates a nice mini stack with Flaherty. Like if you want some cheaper bats to kind of fit him in along with like a higher priced offense, you know, get a little upside from the win equity part of it too for the Tigers. Don't kind of prefer them as a small stack, but you will definitely see some Tigers 5-mans from here as well.
Yeah. We'll see. I'll probably keep some Flaherty in there, but I do really like some of these cheap pitchers that we're talking about. So I do like Flaherty too, but I haven't made my my decision. I should probably listen to Bryce over here and keep Flaherty in the pool, but you know, I like to gamble it up a little bit on Sunday. So we'll see. I do think, yeah, Meadows looks like an amazing play. Like I said, I bet the stolen bases props on Meadows, Green, Carpenter. Yeah, those three. So I do think those guys have extra upside. And Joe Boyle, who is talented, no question. Like I said last time he was on the slate, capable of just a complete meltdown. One of the guys, you know, if you told me like one pitcher wasn't going to get out of the first inning today, Joe Boyle would be the top of my list. Just he can completely lose the strike zone and totally melt down. So very much in on the Detroit Tigers today. I think they should do some damage. Let's get to maybe the best hitting weather on this slate. It is Chicago White Sox, Kansas City Royals up next. Total sitting at 9. We have Alec Marsh going up against the White Sox. And I don't know if you saw that White Sox lineup, Bryce. Man, it's bad right now. They lost Eloy Jimenez, and then more importantly, Luis Robert going to be out long time. I think he has a grade 2 hip flexor. Going to be, I think, at least a month for Luis Robert. This was already a horrible lineup. Alec Marsh actually looked surprisingly good in his first start against the Orioles. Made it through 7 innings, just 1 earned run, 5 Ks, 26 DraftKings points. I don't think he's quite as good as he showed in that start, but really hard to argue with the matchup here against the White Sox. Winds blowing out to left center field at 20 miles per hour, which I think has this total pretty high, but it is still a decent pitcher's park in Kansas City, even with those winds. It's a very big park overall, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So Marsh is interesting, and then the guy on the other side, Garrett Crochet, talked about him. He was the opening day starter for the White Sox. We were on him in that Detroit start, absolutely shoved. And I was kicking myself on the next start on the Braves. I let like we said, we just don't use many pitchers against the Braves. I knew how good Crochet.
I had zero. It was tough.
I played a
liked
little bit, and I knew how good he was, and I knew he was going to be super low owned. And it was a play that I would normally make. I think I had like some cheap pitchers the day before get blown up, so I'm like, do I really want to go back to another cheap guy in the toughest matchup? And of course, he absolutely shoved on the Braves. Got through 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, 93 pitches. So 87 the first outing, 93 the second. And like I've said, the 2 shows that I've been on where Crochet started, this guy is as legit as they come. I mean, like, he's not going to be able to throw enough innings to win a Cy Young award. He absolutely has that type of talent from a start-to-start basis. Probably my favorite young pitcher, kind of under the radar pitcher in all of baseball right now. And I mean, the Royals are sitting there with like a 4.6, 4.7 team total. It seems crazy to me. Crochet clearly not getting that much respect, from the public, from the line makers. I do think he will come in fairly chalky. What do you have Crochet at on DraftKings ownership wise? Maybe it's going to be low, isn't it? I guess. I mean, I still see Saber predicting him as low, but I have seen a lot of chatter around Crochet, rightfully so. Anyway, whatever it is, I want to be over the field on Crochet. There's just too much talent here. I'm such a believer in him. It's not that tough of a matchup against the Royals, right? It's not a lineup that you're screaming, running away from. It is even a little bit weaker today than it typically is. So I got to be in on Crochet. I'll have Marsh mixed in as well. And then not going to many hitters here. What about you, Bryce? What do you think here on Crochet, Marsh, White Sox, and Royals?
I think Crochet will definitely carry some ownership. I think Marsh will probably carry around the same. I think they're both in a good spot here. You talked about how depleted this White Sox team is. I mean, the Royals are hitting Nick Lofton third. It's not like they're anything to really watch out for either. I do love Bobby Witt. He's been absolutely hammering the ball to start the year. Don't think anyone's really going to play him. It depends how much people kind of inflate this win stuff. Our resident Kansas City expert AP noted that Coffin Field, like the wind swirls a bit at the top, so like it doesn't help as much as some parks where it's blowing straight out. But I don't mind choosing hitters in this game. Everyone's super cheap. I think they do have upside. I think the pitchers have upside too. This is kind of a situation where I'm going to be playing both sides. And like these young pitchers with tons of strikeout ability also have ability to get blown up. So like kind of like I said with the Yankees, I'm kind of taking the same approach here. Like I'll be playing the pitchers and I'll be playing some of the hitters. If I had to choose a side here, I'd choose pitchers over hitters, but it's not like a game I'm Xing out hitters from. I think they work super well as like secondary stacks. Really easy to fit in the Braves if you stack either of these teams secondary. Like you have good pieces on these teams for like $3K or even cheaper. So kind of preferred secondary stacks. I do like the upside of the pitchers here. I'm likely going to be around 20 to 25 on each pitcher. Sounds about right. Maybe a little bit lower if I'm not able to squeeze in the rest of these teams. Did not build before the show. I prefer building when we have all the teams and like we know we're going to get the lineups, just so I'm not like constantly adjusting. But yeah, I'll likely come in over on the pitchers here and maybe under on 5-man stacks and over on 3-man stacks, if that makes sense. I kind of like the more secondary guys here as opposed to the full 5-man.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I will have a lot of Crochet, but if you're not on him or it just seems like you don't have him. Bobby Witt has been absolutely locked in right now. I know he's expensive, 6,100, but every time I watch him hit, he seems like he's going to do damage. Could absolutely see him taking Crochet deep. I do think he's the most dangerous bat, but also Michael Garcia, Nelson Velasquez, 3,600. They do have some players who can do damage, and we do know the wind can be blowing out in Kaufman. So, yeah, it makes sense. I don't think I'm going to full stack against Crochet, but including kind of the power righty bats against him makes sense to me. And this White Sox team, I'll pass. They're just so bad that I don't really want to get too many White Sox. Luis Robert was kind of the one guy I was playing. He's obviously not in the lineup today. All right, we'll keep it moving. Next game on the slate, Seattle and the Milwaukee Brewers. This one, another game with an 8.5 total, obviously played in the Dome in Milwaukee. Colin Rea on the hill for the Brewers. Just a pretty pedestrian right-handed arm. Pitchers have done well against the Mariners so far. I still don't think I'll be going to Colin Rea myself. Emerson Hancock, kind of the Mariners' fifth starter, not really any good either, going for the Mariners. So I'm not on either of these pitchers, really. I do think both these offenses are in play. Where do you stand, Bryce, on Mariners and Brewers?
I think this is one of the better hitting games of the day. I think both these teams come in way too low owned for the upside they have. I mean, the Mariners have just kind of been shitty to start the year, but they don't have bad individual bats. I really like them in the spot compared to what the industry is projecting them owned. Neither team's expensive. You can get the 4-hitter on each team for $3,800 and $2,800. It's a super easy stack. I'm going to be playing 3 and 5 mans here. One of my favorite spots on both sides of the game to be over. I think Julio Rodriguez is probably one of the better low-owned plays of the day. I think he's really good one-off if you want to go that route. Don't have any interest in Hancock or Rea. I'm not exiting them out of my pool, but I'd be super surprised if they slip into any more than a couple of my teams today. Prefer hitting in this game. Favorite one-off from the Brewers here. You don't have Yelich in the team. It kind of hurts the Brewers a bit, but it also makes them cheaper to stack. Probably prefer them as 3 mans as opposed to 5 mans, and Seattle as a 5-man, but I could definitely see Brewers 5 mans as well. Favorite one-off here would be Willy Adames, but they're best hitters out of the lineup, so take it with a grain of salt. Still doesn't put me on Hancock or anything like that. You'll see this stuff happen on Sundays. Some of the veterans get rests, and especially catcher if you're new to baseball. So kind of what makes me like Sundays as well too. You get a little more lineup flexibility. I think this, if it was a different game and a different pitcher, Yelich being out would be a situation to attack, but I don't think it matters a ton here simply because I'm not going to be playing much Hancock either way.
Yeah, thoughts undone. He was in my core a couple nights ago when he hit that home run. Almost got me to the top. Didn't clean up today. Power, speed from the left side, and a really underrated hitter overall. Definitely in on the Oliver Dunn train again against Hancock. Another one that if you're into the props, his steal number looks good to me as well. Oliver Dunn, absolutely in on him, and like the Brewers in general, of course. Next game up would be Cleveland and Minnesota, but as we mentioned, that game is postponed. Don't play Guardians or Twins today. That brings us to Miami and St. Louis, our second to last game that we'll talk about. I'm just looking for there. It is. Potential little bit of weather issues in St. Louis. I think it should be fine to play. Looks pretty warm there. 60 degrees, 17 mile per hour winds blowing out to left field. We've got Kyle Gibson on the hill for St. Louis. Looked pretty good his opening start against the Padres. He'll go up against highly touted Marlins rookie Max Meyer, thrown from the right side. Interesting game here, I think. Looks like pretty standard lineups from both sides. A 9 total. A lot of faith in the Cardinals. I think, frankly, too much faith. But the Marlins have been dreadful so far. Still do not have a win on the season. Talk to me, Bryce. Cardinals and Marlins. I think I'm going to be kind of just mostly off this game in general, but it would probably be the offense that I'd be more likely to go to. What do you see between the Marlins and the Cardinals?
Yeah, another game. Pitching, not Xing these guys out, but I'm not going to be I don't have a huge take on either pitcher. Likely between, I don't know, probably 5% on Gibson and what was I looking at here? Probably around the same on Meyer.
Makes sense to me.
Not gonna get into a ton of my lineups. Also, not entirely fading. Both teams do have some strikeouts in their respective lineups. Favorite Cardinals play here: Ivan Herrera for 2.9K, hitting fourth at catcher. Like the spot for him a good amount. Not really worried about the weather. If anything, it's hot, and the ball could be going a bit here. The Marlins have been super hot to start the season. And, some of these guys have had massive games like Jake Berger, et cetera. So I think they might garner a little more ownership than they should here. Don't mind the Cardinals at all in this spot. I'm likely going to be over on Herrera, Goldie, Arenado. I think Gorman has a lot of upside that he hasn't necessarily shown yet. So don't mind the Cardinals as 3 or 5 mans, likely going to be under the Marlins here. And if I had to choose a pitcher in this game, I'd choose Gibson over Meyer. Meyer does have some upside, which is why he's staying in my teams, but not something I'm actively looking to target.
Makes sense to me. Let's get to the last game on the slate. After that, we'll do stacks, pitcher, and play of the day. Then we'll get out of here, build our own lineups. Still got 90 minutes before the start of the slate. Chicago and the Los Angeles Dodgers up next. This one is in, I think, potential to get delayed or postponed. I think it's raining in Chicago now, or will be shortly, and the rain should continue. Looks like for most of the afternoon into the evening. I think there's a decent chance this game doesn't play at all. It is the last game on the slate, obviously, and you certainly don't want to get stuck with players from this game if it does end up getting postponed. Only 5 minutes after, 5-10 minutes after some of these other games, so you should be able to swap. Should have that information, but I am genuinely worried about this game, Bryce. Shota Imanaga, over from Japan, going for the Cubs. He looked awesome in his opening day start. Gavin Stone for the Dodgers, I think a pretty decent pitcher as well. Honestly, I feel pretty comfortable just kind of Xing this game out. Going to be cold and windy in Wrigley Field, rather. 2 decent pitchers. I know these offenses are fantastic, but with the weather situation, a lot of games to choose from. I'm okay kind of just not playing this game. Where do you stand on the Cubs and the Dodgers?
Let me double up on the Braves for super expensive as opposed to playing extra Dodgers in this spot. It's also not a super easy game to swap off of because, while you have other games this time, if it looks really bad around 2, if the game was to start in a delay, I'd be extremely worried.
Yes.
If it doesn't start in a delay, I think hitters are probably fine if it starts on time. It's just
Agreed.
Say you're playing Ohtani, Betts, et cetera. It's you're going to be eating a ton of salary, swapping to kind of whoever. So for max prices, I think the safe play here is just to fade. I don't really want pitchers in the spot regardless. 2 above average pitchers and 2 offenses that have tons of upside, but especially on the Dodgers side are super expensive. I think it's a pretty easy game to click off of. So, I don't really see myself making any moves here.
Yeah, I guess, if you're playing 1 or 2 lineups to get off to a rough start, your pitchers get roughed up or something like that, you could try to swap to a Dodgers stack because nobody's going to play it, right? And they do maintain upside. But in general, I'm with you. Not a game that I'm going to have much of, at least in my initial build. That is all 10 games. Let's go with your favorite stack overall, and then maybe a contrarian stack. I'll go first, give you a chance to think about it a little bit. Braves will be my highest owned stack on this slate, going a lot of cheaper pitching, which does allow me, of course, to get those Braves into my lineups. I do think they have the most upside overall on this slate. Oftentimes, it's going to be the case many times, but I do think it is true here as well. And then kind of contrarian stack. I don't know how contrarian it'll be, but I do like the Brewers against Emerson Hancock at home. No Christian Yelich is unfortunate, but it does make the stack a little bit cheaper. That top 5 I like a lot. I like Jackson Chourio down in the 7 hole as well. I believe the Brewers should be running on Emerson Hancock today as well. So, really good spot, I think, for the Brewers. So Braves and Brewers for me. over to you third for your favorite stack overall, and then maybe a little bit of a contrarian one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Braves the most. I don't think that's a super contrarian take today. It's just kind of how you fit them in and how many you're going to fit in your roster construction. So, like, if you're playing the Braves, maybe play a couple like guys towards the bottom of the order, like play some off chalk pitchers, play like a weird secondary stack, like do something, differentiate yourself a bit. I like the Orioles and the Cardinals as my two like high upside, like lower own stacks. I think the Braves just garner so much ownership here that their team totals don't come in too far off.
Yeah.
Especially in the Orioles spot, you're guaranteed 9 innings in like pretty friendly hitter weather. So give me the Orioles.
All right. We'll do kind of your favorite pitcher, maybe the one you think you'll be kind of most different from the field on. I got to go with my guy, Garrett Crochet. He will get some ownership. I think it's going to be too low. And I do think he's going to do it again. Third time in a row I'm expecting from Garrett Crochet, even in, I guess, a somewhat tough matchup against the Kansas City Royals. Your favorite overall pitcher today, Bryce?
Ownership considered. I mean, without ownership, it'd be Flaherty, but we're considering ownership here.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Christopher Sanchez. Like him a good amount against the Nats today.
Yeah, he's on my short list as well. I would throw in Mackenzie Gore in that list as well. Again, really do like some of these a little bit more contrarian pitchers on the slate. All right, play of the day. We'll go with obviously a bat here. I will go with I know you like him, but I'll take him anyway. Mr. Spencer Steer against Sean Manaea, the lefty in Cincinnati, crushing lefties off to a very good start this year. So Spencer Steer, my play of the day. Bryce, your play of the day today.
It's the highest WOBA in baseball, or ex-WOBA. I forget which I was looking at earlier. Spencer Steer does, at least. He's been absolutely smashing the ball. Yeah. I love that call. I'm going to go with Ryan Mountcastle. I just really think he matches Gonzalez in the spot.
Soft toss and lefty in Marco Gonzalez. That's a prime spot for Mr. Mountcastle. So love that call. That'll do it for the show. We do appreciate you guys watching. As always, hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet done so. And the show will be back, I believe, 4:45 Eastern time on Monday. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy your Sunday. Good luck in your contest. For Third and Schlong, I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.